Welcome to the Music Wide Open podcast
The place for an honest and thought-provoking conversation
about music,
business,
life,
technology,
and the future,
for curious music enthusiasts.
and musicians seeking personal growth. I'm Ingolf Wunder.
And I am Paulina Wunder. Musicians with a brain chip. It still sounds like a science fiction subject, but slowly it becomes less of a fiction and more of a science. Today, very many people will say it's impossible. Musicians are naturally blessed and gifted. They don't need any chip. They won't go that far. And even if there will be maybe just an outlier, one guinea pig, that's it. What if not? What if musicians start to see a personal growth opportunity in implantable brain-computer interfaces? There are several companies that are actively developing BCI, brain-computer interface technology. Neuralink, Synchron, Paradromics, BlackRock Neurotech, Precision Neuroscience, etc. And there are people who actually already have the BCI implanted. In today's episode, I would like to focus on one of the companies that develop BCIs, the Neuralink, and to talk about the future of musicians. What that whole thing could mean for them. Ingolf, do you think musicians will go for it?
Yes.
Would you do that?
Well, I have two hearts in me. The techie, the tech freak would definitely love to try. So in an ideal world where you could put that stuff in and take it out again without doing any harm, I would try it for a couple of weeks. But of course that's not possible. The human in me, or let's call it the musician, or at least the picture of a musician like I see or I want a musician to be, I would say no, because I still would love to think that the beauty of music and the high spirit of what I look for in music is above technology and explainable things. If that's true or not, I don't know, but I definitely hope so. So therefore, yes and no.
The musician in you wouldn't, but you think, and I think, by the way, the same, other musicians would eventually get such an implant in future. It needs some explanation, I believe, and we will do so. But first, some basic facts. So the Neuralink is about the size of a coin. It uses over 1,000 electrodes that are on very thin, flexible threads. And the implantation requires a surgery performed by a robot that is supervised by a human being, at least still. At the moment, there is only one person with the Neuralink implanted. We're not talking about other BCIs, but the vision of the company is very ambitious. What is the current vision of the Neuralink?
Well, you might call it the optimism of an entrepreneur, but they want to have like 1,000 people in 2 years from now and hundreds of millions of people in 10 years from now. Even if that's grossly
exaggerated,
thank you. It's still 10, 20 years from now, right?
Keeping in mind that other companies as well are working at the same time.
Exactly. And also what they say is that in 2 years time from now already, a normal person not educated in professional gaming at all with a Neuralink should beat a pro gamer or one of the best pro gamers in the world with ease if this pro gamer doesn't have a Neuralink, because the Neuralink will give you such a speed increase that you will just, with hand-eye coordination, you will just beat the guy. That's what they say. And if one thinks here piano or musicians, it's not that far away in terms of skill.
Especially that the speed became a...
Well, speed became, unfortunately, in my opinion, a key metric of evaluating a pianist, which, in my opinion,
Not only a pianist, by the way.
Yeah,
Speed
absolutely.
is impressive, simply.
That's correct, and sexy, and that's why it also went this way. But if one thinks about what music should be, in my opinion, and this will of course come up multiple times in this podcast, is that music is much more than precision and speed. Now, of course, all the pianists, also those that focus way too much on speed and precision, will also agree with what I just said, because it's socially accepted to say, speed is not important. I just play much quicker than others. No, anyway, but since speed is such a overrated attribute or metric, this will probably, if it's safe enough, come to music and come to musicians.
Okay, speed is one thing. What else?
Well, of course, precision increase, as we already touched upon. Like, if you can play without mistakes, you are, in nowadays music world, a better musician, which is completely wrong. Yeah.
Of what art is.
But that will, many people will find it sexy that you can be more precise and
quicker and more precise.
Yes. And then one more important aspect is performance, in that sense, like focus under stress, and more attention while you play, like it's sort of a drug kind of thing, just not with pharma, but with electrodes. And then multitasking is another thing. Like it's a high, or it's a skill that only highly skilled pianists possess, is that you can actually have a conversation while you play a musical piece nicely, like without interfering with your playing. And not even the highest skilled pianists can do it always. With a device like Neuralink, you can actually multitask, because you can do two or more things at the same time with the same attention. That will be a game changer. Such things will be game changers for pianists or other musicians.
Another thing is as well playing under stress. So all these musicians that have a problem with performing on stage, with stage fright, might benefit from this invention big time.
Absolutely, and since in a way natural music making, which will also come often to in this podcast, has a lot to do with being natural on stage as well. That you're not inhibited by stress too much. Everybody has stress if you have to perform at one point. You have to be at your best at this point, obviously. But there are people who can cope better than others, and in nowadays times, this natural performance ability on stage that people in the past seem to have possessed, that we have actual recorded proof that they did, improvising before they play and then playing without effort, or seemingly without effort. This is also decreasing such skills, so people will want to have shortcuts to sort of feel better on stage.
Especially that every day is different, and also every concert is different. So even if you usually can cope with stress, there are days that you're more sensitive.
Especially in such a streamlined environment as classical music has become. What I mean by streamlined is that there is exactly this what you said was the beauty in the past, that people had different days where they played actually almost entirely different.
That's true.
And nowadays it's just like
copy paste. You need to deliver the same way over and over again.
Sometimes even people play the same when they were 15 and when they are 50, which is impossible
actually.
Yeah,
right?
but they still do,
Yes.
and that's why. And in such a kind of robotic world, such a
it's very
implant.
tempting. It might be really very tempting. So if this works the way it's envisioned, then I'm pretty sure very many musicians will get it.
even music and poetry is in the heads of people behind Neuralink. They speak about that they want to go into consciousness and all these things, and they even mention that poetry, like has a stronger meaning for the brain and stuff like this. So they find that in their studies already. So they will have already or will find that music has potentially even a stronger meaning for the brain that they will then also want to decode. And then having something for musicians will be it's like a special feature or something. Is not something that is fiction.
It might be a very uncomfortable subject for musicians or passionate music lovers, but I think it's important to talk about it, even if it sounds a bit futuristic. Whether we like it or not, it will simply happen. In a way, the future is now. And we are talking about here pianists or violinists or instrumentalists, but I'm also thinking about what it means for conductors. Imagine if you have an implant, symphonies by heart, and this is of course now conductors as well. There are many conductors and that perform exclusively by heart, and also this is something that is then later talked on. You know what, this conductor, this and that conductor performs by heart everything. The whole concerts. Always. So this is something very tempting as well. Later might be, but then if we spin it further, if you make some kind of modification to such an implant and then add on top of that an AI analysis of the available historical materials, and for example you can get the moves of a famous conductor of the past, so you can have Bernstein, Karajan, Kleiber at your disposal. And all the symphonies.
Well, thinking about conductors is really a funny thing, because when you mentioned that, I was thinking immediately, well, actually nowadays music business, the role of the conductor has been drastically diminished anyway already as it is.
That's true.
And
that's true.
If one imagines, like, people try already to be imposters of past performances. Bad ones, by the way, but sometimes still hailed for what they do. So that's of course one thing. Of course you can recreate almost everything, but I would even go one step further. I could say, what if all the musicians in the orchestra have a Neuralink? Then you could give them. Then you could conduct them even without the conductor. And you think, okay, now you're conducted by Bernstein, and now you're conducted by Kleiber, and you just play like they conducted. I mean, of course, this is like we make robots out of humans. That's already really.
I wouldn't say we make now while we're talking robots out of humans. They do that to themselves.
They do that themselves already, I know.
This is unfortunately the problem.
This would be a natural evolution. But I think here, I think Neuralink can also be, that's why we are doing this podcast, right? I mean, on the one hand, we are both very interested in technology in that sense that we are open-minded thinkers of what might come and enjoy that creation process. But at the same time, we also bring up these subjects in order to make people aware of what music should be about, what actually to be human should be about. Because you mentioned conductors, why are past conductors, why were they great? Or why did they have a personal style? Or why, because they, in my opinion, and I think it can be backed up by history, they had a foundational thinking of music. They had a personal vision, because they thought about how they. This is also very tricky, by the way, when I say such words like personal vision and stuff, because these are the empty phrases that pop up everywhere, and everybody's talking about these words, but the meaning behind is missing. What I mean is that such people didn't care about who did something in the past. They didn't even know because it was not so prevalent. Now nobody, in Toscanini didn't necessarily know what the conductor in another country did exactly, because there were not so many recordings and stuff like this. So they had the foundational vision of the piece and didn't care. They cared about the composer's vision, the score, and such foundational things, but they didn't care about shallow things like what other people would think about it, what is socially accepted and stuff like this. That's why they had a real deep vision of what they wanted to convey, and this they most of the time conveyed to the orchestra musician, which with great power and almost sometimes sadistic.
That's true. Like
sadistic means, but so the musicians couldn't do different and do what the maestro said, right? And this vision of a conductor is not anymore like that. That's why also here the streamlining process, that most of the conductors don't have a personal vision. The orchestra plays like the orchestra plays anyway.
Which actually, by the way, we heard that from the orchestra members, right?
Yeah, so if they like a conductor, they play like they always play. If they don't like a conductor, they play like he conducts.
Implying that he's a bad conductor.
But of course, there are many reasons for that. But I made now an excursion of the point why we are bringing these subjects up, because I think such a device as Neuralink can make us think of what is actually important in human music making.
Going back to the Neuralink, now this whole concept is, of course, sounding a bit laughable for many people. One could say absurd. They might even think, are you crazy? Never, I don't believe in it. They might even think that we are crazy, that we are going that far. But, one can't forget that the people thought the same about the cars. Because they believe that the horse carriages are the only rational and possible means of transport, and also by the way, in the early days of the internet, particularly in the 80s, many people found the concept of the internet laughable and doubted its potential. They couldn't imagine that, and these are facts. So that's why I wouldn't dismiss the BCI, so the brain-computer interfaces.
True.
Because the future is not that far away. And it might simply change the landscape of musicians very quickly. And I think it's crucial to soon focus on one question: what is art, and what is an artist?
Yeah, exactly right. And I think this is the positive way of looking at it, because sooner or later we have to ask ourselves this question. And if enough people look for these ground questions, then there's actually a chance that this musical quality and music making in general will go into a better direction again in the future. And this is why I think technology in that sense can also help us improve as humans. Because there will be always two groups. There will be this group that will jump on it and that will be totally using Neuralink and everything, because don't forget, we mention our musicians, but other professions we will not cover that here. But think about coders, think about lawyers, doctors who can.
Well, let's face it. Look, let's face it. If there are really a lot of people with BCIs implanted, then along the Neuralink is thinking of a direct brain-to-brain communication. Now imagine there is a concert, and there are a lot of people already in the public that have the implant, and the musicians as well. Yeah. They don't have to make any sound, basically.
Exactly. This is this is what they are saying. I mean, they say already that the concept of communication is supposed to be changed in a way, supposed to be made much, much, much quicker, so that you don't even have to spell out the words anymore in order to convey to the other person what you mean. And this, of course, this is totally futuristic, and who knows how far that is from now, but might not be that far either. And then you have to rethink the concept of what brain-to-brain music will be like.
The main reason that we are talking about, you mentioned that already, but I think it's very important to repeat that these difficult questions, unbelievable in their substance, because they are so sci-fi like, are discussed.
Well, so that we can still improve us as humans, basically, because it goes to that extent. You know, if they talk about, which they also do, about memory upload into the cloud, once your body dies, your memory stays, and all of that thing. So the fusion of AI and humans, it really has to make us think, what is human? And since music is one of the very basic and very first things humans do, kids sing, hum, whatever, you know, we do music.
Especially that here in these solutions, let's call them this way, we are not talking about an AI program that you just use as an app, but something that you're becoming.
Exactly, because you also cannot forget that such devices at the stage right now have to calibrate it very regularly. So it means they're in the stage now where with each person that has such a device implanted, they learn, they get millions of billions or trillions of data points. So in other words, because the guy that has Neuralink, for example, says that, you know, if he calibrates it this way or that way, then he has a more precise mouse movement than what it is. So in other words, the AI models that look into the human, so to speak, and really into the human because it's implanted, they are learning human brain behavior. So what if you imagine now that only 1 million of 1 million Neuralinks are implanted into people, what kind of data they learn about the brain or the human? I think this is the ultimate goal can be probably to make an artificial human, which is a very, very old dream of humans, to make an artificial human. But they might go very close to that. And then is the question really, in music, for example, this natural music making that I'm talking about, this beauty of and conveying these emotions in music that we call human, what are they really? Are they just a set of random group of notes and harmonies that are just give us something, and anyway everybody will hear it a bit different, and it's all random? Or is there something that makes us humans better than if a MIDI just creates some music?
This is what we believe in, and this is
what I want to believe and what I think there is ground to believe. But is it really true? We don't know.
Well, listening to some musicians, one could they ask this question exactly.
Yeah, that's my point. And other humans still cheer for it or even like it.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, you can like everything. You can convince yourself to like everything. And that's the problem of humans. If you...
Well, it is like with food. If you're exposed at some point only to a certain kind of food, you like it.
You start to like it because you have no other choice.
You have no other choice because there's nothing else.
Yeah.
Or very little of something, and this is very difficult to get, right?
Exactly. But if you then... the more this is like we have a small toddler now. If you look at him when he learns things or stuff, this becoming aware of things, this is so powerful. Like if a toddler becomes aware of colors, for example, and all of a sudden he sees colors everywhere and he didn't see the colors before, this is like a musical concept. If you're not aware of, for example, natural music making or some stuff like that, it's non-existent for you. And once you're aware of it, you see it everywhere.
I know, but if it's non-existent for you, you don't miss it. You're not unhappy.
These big questions are raised by such inventions. So, and because you need to ask yourself, is it just all, like, if you don't miss it, as you say, is it all the same? Like, if somebody is happy anyway, we know already that there's very little objectivity in humans, but is there such a thing as objective evaluation of things, at least to some extent? I believe yes. but I might be wrong. And such ground questions are there for us to be, discovered and thought of because of such inventions. And this is beautiful.
On condition that we ask the uncomfortable questions. Otherwise, it can be only dangerous or sad.
Well, if there are such things as uncomfortable questions, actually there are not, but they are in our
feel
society.
I feel that for the classical music circle, there are a lot of uncomfortable questions, unfortunately.
Yes, for humans generally, unfortunately, but yeah.
But let's stick to this inevitable, in a way, vision. Whenever it happens, it can be in 5, 10 years. Imagine a prestigious and important music competition, a piano competition, and a participant with a Neuralink. Nobody knows about it. It's not yet common. No one suspects it. Well, it is possible. And he wins. He wins because he's motorically enhanced, has better memory and focus, doesn't make mistakes, is quicker, more precise, can control the movement of his fingers better. He's impressive. And let's face it, we are easy to impress by, let's call them secondary values, such as speed and no mistakes. So if there is someone who is superior in terms of musical expression, depth and sound that he creates, because the sound is an art in itself, but makes more mistakes or has small memory lapses here and there, whatever we say, because we humans tend to say this what makes us look more knowledgeable and sophisticated and not what we necessarily feel.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever we say, for most of the people nowadays, the musician with better memory, motor skills and control, so no mistakes, will defeat the musician who puts emphasis on musical expression.
Correct.
That's why it is so important that classical musicians who are now in their 30s, 20s, and their teens become more aware of this, what the classical music world tends to dismiss, the power of technology. Not in order to use it, but in order to become less mechanic, less standardized, and more individual, more sensitive, more human.